What's up, my Monster Masters and awesome Spider-Man fans? Monster Master Godzilla here, and I'm here to officially end the Spider-Man-A-Thon. We're now wrapping it up with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I saw it in the theaters over the weekend, so if you haven't seen this movie, I recommend you get off this video now, because this is major spoiler territory. So, you have been warned that you're coming into spoiler territory. Because this one's fairly new and it just came out in the theaters. So whatever you do, I recommend you get off this video if you don't want spoilers. So here we go. All right. It's continuing the story of Into the Spider-Verse. This time we got more versions of Spider-Man that appear on the big screen. And Miles, of course, is continuing his life as Spider-Man. And all the versions of Spider-Man got back to their proper homes. And there's Spider-Gwen. Gwen was missing her friend, like Miles Morales. And she's missing all her friends since they're all sent back to their proper time universes. And it turns out they give her more story and character development with Spider-Gwen. And Peter Parker was bullied by Ned Leeds instead of Eugene Flash Thompson. And so Peter made an experiment which turning him into the Lizard, which Gwen tried stopping Peter at the homecoming party dance, and then got killed by the rubble. And he was crushed under the rubble, and Gwen was sorry they couldn't save him. But then her father, Captain George Stacy, showed up, was convinced that Gwen killed him. So he ended up escaping. So meanwhile at Gwen's universe, the Vulture showed up. But except it was a Vulture from a Renaissance universe. And Gwen tries fighting off the Vulture. And then we introduced Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, which Jessica Drew from a different universe. Which, Jessica Drew from the comic books is a Caucasian girl. This time they had her reimagined as a African American, and which they confirmed that there'll be a more comic accurate version of Jessica Drew will appear later on in the Spider-Verse. Which, happy they would do that, because it was since it's multiverse, it's very appropriate that you have to have a comic book version of the accurate version. And for the first time on the big screen, for a big role, the first big role on the big screen would be for Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man of 2099. And when Spider-Gwen gets to meet Miguel O'Hara for the first time, he said something, called him like Dark Garfield or something, which was hilarious. And the voice of Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, was voiced by none other than Oscar Isaac, which you had probably remembered him when he was the Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse, as well as Poe Dameron in Star Wars. His character from Dune, the remake of Dune. and he was also Moon Knight. And recently, he was also the voice of Mark Spector / Moon Knight, which Mark Spector, of course, has multiple personalities, so he's also Stephen Grant and Jake Lockley. Okay, so anyway, back to this film. The story was that Spider-Man 2099 was gathering as a whole elite force, trying to make sure everything stays together, as the whole universe, all their universes stay canon to each other, stay canon and never been messed up. He was trying to make things right, staying the whole universe stay the way they're supposed to be. So then Miles is continuing his life as being Spider-Man, and he's supposed to be, but he has some struggles balancing his life as both Spider-Man and Miles. So now, for the first time on the big screen, we introduce the Spot. This is this villain who is all white with black spots all over him, who can summon portals. Yeah, and he's not one of Spider-Man's huge enemies from the comic books, but this time is the first time he appears on the big screen in an animated flick. And so then the Spot. My first introduction to the Spot in Spider-Man lore was the animated series. Yes, the Spot actually does appear in the comic books, but I have never heard of him until the 90s cartoon, which I found, and I originally thought he was made up for the 90s cartoon, but it actually came out, but he actually does appear in the comic books. Real name Dr. Jonathan Owen. And it turns out you know how, and remember how Miles Morales threw a bagel at a scientist in the first film? Well, it was revealed to be that scientist that he threw a bagel at was actually Dr. Jonathan Owen, and he later became the Spot through an accident which causing the spots all over him, and he tries to warp through holes and stuff, time-dimensional holes. And when Miles first met him, he tried to say, what are you? Are you some kind of cow or Dalmatian? Because being all white with black spots. And it definitely reminded me from the 90s cartoon, when Spider-Man did say to the Spot, shouldn't you be the mascot in a fire station? So after dealing with the Spot, Gwen ends up going on a mission to find the Spot as well. And they had a... So then they featured... So then when Miles ends up seeing Gwen for the first time, he introduced Gwen to his parents, which still referring to her as Gwanda for a cover, because Gwen doesn't exist in Miles's universe, which probably in Miles's universe Gwen is already dead, probably. And they reference that every universe, saying that every universe Gwen falls for Spidey. But every other universe, it doesn't always work that way. And, like just saying from every universe there is. So Miles, of course he's the main hero, the main focus of the film, just like the first one is. So then Miles follows Gwen where she's going. So then after being around Gwen, we finally introduced even more versions of Spider-Man, other than Jessica Drew from a parallel universe. Jessica Drew in this one is pregnant is expecting a child in this one. Yeah, that's right. Jessica Drew, he did kick butt while she was pregnant in the comics. And she's riding a motorcycle in this one. This time, for the first time on the big screen, we introduce Spider-Man India. Which, the real name, I know I have it in my mind, but it escapes my mind because it's an Indian name. But if you remember the name, just write down in the comments below and I'll read it. So, because that's an Indian name and sometimes I can't even remember it, that's all. Because sometimes foreign names can be really hard to remember. Like Pravakar, I think it is. I'm sorry if I butchered the name, but all I can remember is Spider-Man India. And the costume's a little different from the actual comic book though. But it still had a nice design though. And they actually brought that character to life. I mean, they gave some character development still, because for those who never read the comic books, for the first time we end up... And then another version of Spider-Man they introduced on the big screen was Spider-Punk. And that was Hobie Brown. But from what I remembered, Hobie Brown, originally he was the Prowler in the original Spider-Man's universe. Originally, Hobie Brown was the original Prowler before Aaron Davis became the Prowler. So, after introducing Spider-Man India and Hobie Brown, the other versions of Spider-Man came to the rescue, in which you end up seeing hundreds of different versions of Spider-Man on the big screen. So it became like Ready Player One Spider-Man edition. No joke. They actually showed miscellaneous versions of Spider-Man, along with the different versions of the villains from parallel universes. That store clerk from Venom actually made a cameo when Spot was hopping through dimensions to see what's what. Like, we introduced the Lego Spider-Man, the Lego universe. They literally used the Lego universe. They actually used a Lego version of Spider-Man in this film. Like, from the 90s cartoons, we actually got to see the 90s Spider-Man, the Spider-Man from the 1994 cartoon, as well as Spider-Man Unlimited. And we also got to see Spider-Man from the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. And they referenced all the Spider-Man movies from the live-action films, including Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland. We even got to see Donald Glover as the Prowler from the MCU. Yes, I'm not joking. They actually used some live-action scenes as well. I never expected to see some live-action scenes being that's an animated Spider-Man film. But that was clever, especially for the whole Spider-Verse that they got going on. Even Spider-Man from the 2018 game from Insomniac is going, and they included his voice actor as well. And the 60s Spider-Man from the 60s cartoon had appeared for a cameo, as well as the Spider-Man from the live-action Japanese series came on screen as well. Like, pretty much like all versions of Spidey was like ridiculous, and it's awesome to see all different versions of Spider-Man together on screen. So then later, and of course the iconic Peter B. Parker appeared on the big screen, and he's back. And this time you see that he actually did rekindle his relationship with Mary Jane, and they had a kid together. And for the first time on the big screen, we actually see Mayday Parker. But Mayday Parker was an infant in this one. But when I remembered, in the comic book, she was already a teenager. And now when we introduced Miguel O'Hara, so when Miles was introduced to Miguel O'Hara, the Miguel O'Hara, oh my God, Miguel O'Hara, he's being such a dick in this film, which they made him an asshole and a villain and the villain of the film. But normally Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, is a hero, but this story is facing a conflict. That's why Spider-Man 2099 is going after Miles as Spider-Man, thinking that he's like an imposter Spider-Man, that he wasn't meant to be Spider-Man, saying that the spider came from a different Earth. The spider that bit Miles came from a different Earth, which is Earth 42, which found out that Miles was not meant to become Spider-Man in his own universe. But he did anyway, and he says none of this would have happened if you became Spider-Man. He said if you hadn't become Spider-Man, your Peter Parker of your universe would have still be alive, and your uncle wouldn't be dead. And like, he even got to see cameos of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in there. And when they referenced Tom Holland, Miles Morales said, Miguel O'Hara did reference No Way Home. He says, "Don't get me started with Doctor Strange and that nerd from Earth 1999-99." Which, that's right, they referenced No Way Home. So, I'm telling you, it's all connected. All the Sony and the Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man movies are connected to one another. So being Miguel O'Hara is being all strict on things that are supposed to be canon. So that's why he's going against Miles Morales, and why he's chasing after Miles Morales and trying to prevent him from being Spider-Man ever again. But it turns out there was a conflict going on, and that's why Miles is running away from Miguel. So then, when Miles was about to go back to his homeworld, his Earth, he later found out he was on the wrong Earth. And it turns out the Earth that he landed on turned out to be that his Uncle Aaron is still alive. Because in the Earth he came from, his uncle died. Because the Kingpin killed him. While it turns out he landed on a different Earth where his Uncle Aaron is still alive, and his father is dead. And his mother is still alive. But it turns out in a parallel universe where Miles became the Prowler instead of Spider-Man. So, and then this is where the movie ends up. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention they introduced Scarlet Spider on the big screen. And Scarlet Spider definitely has his moments where he's funny, all right. And we got Spider Bite, who is like an artificial intelligence Spidey version of Spider-Woman. And so when Scarlet Spider by Ben Reilly, and which I know someday they're probably going to use Kane Parker eventually, since we already introduced Scarlet Spider Ben Reilly. And then Scarlet Spider, Spider-Man 2099, and Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew, were all in search for Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen. This one the spot was still on the loose, and the spot was still at large, and he's gotten power for the whole dimensions, like major power to go after the whole universe, destroy all the universes. So that's when leaving the spot is at large. And so then Miles ends up facing himself in a parallel universe. Gwen ends up gathering the army of her own team of heroes, all of her old friends from parallel universes, including including Spider Noir, Spider Ham, Penny Parker, this time with Spider-Man India and Hobie Brown, Spider-Punk, to help. And but then the ending, and then it ended with just to be continued. Yes, this storyline is a two-parter. So the whole ending just left you wishing for more. And they already confirmed the title for the sequel. And the sequel for that one is called Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, which will be coming next year. And I will be doing a review of that soon. And so yes, originally Across the Spider-Verse was supposed to be called Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, while the sequel continuing it was called Across the Spider-Verse Part 2. But then it was scrapped and it became Across the Spider-Verse, while the third one was called Beyond the Spider-Verse. So that's it for that's the whole Spider-Man-A-Thon. Would I recommend you go see it in the theaters? Yes, you should. If you're a hardcore Spider-Man fan like myself, you must go see it in the theaters. I mean, do not sleep on this film. It's amazing. Like all the cameos, Easter eggs are amazing. The whole setting is spectacular. The story is sensational. Yes, I know I used all the adjectives that describe Spider-Man, but fuck it. It's my review. And oh my goodness, this one's great. It's like an awesome sequel to Into the Spider-Verse. And you must go watch it in the theaters. You do not sleep on this film. And that's all I have to say for you guys. And as always, stay awesome, my Monster Masters, and I'll catch you all later. And stay tuned for more videos outside, because this is the end of the Spider-Man-A-Thon, and I will be continuing other reviews like my Godzilla-thon and Star Wars-a-thon, and keep an eye out for my review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny as I wrap up the Indiana Jones-a-thon. And that's pretty much it for you guys, and thanks for watching this whole Spider-Man-A-Thon journey. It's been a great run for everybody. And as always, stay awesome, my Monster Masters, and my fellow Spider-Man fans. And I'll catch you all later in the next universe.